Profit corporation called the African American Sports Hall of Fame, that it would serve as a national focal point from which citizens would gain a more detailed understanding of the trials and tribulations of African American athletes, and that the Hall of Fame would place the story of African American athletes in a national context, and that no institution currently honors African American sports heroes in all areas of professional sports, and that the mission of this museum would be to collect, preserve, and interpret African American sports history in the context of American social and political history, and how the social and political climate has affected and still affects the role of African American athletes in all sports. And that many citizens of the city have suggested the establishment of a park in downtown Richmond to honor the late Arthur Ashe. And so this resolution calls for developing Arthur Ashe Park in downtown Richmond, to make it the home of the African American Sports Hall of Fame, which will honor African Americans, as I have said. This is a separate proposal from the others, obviously. So we have in these four papers basically three issues: the development of a memorial along Monument Avenue commemorating African Americans who have led the human rights movement in Virginia and in the nation. We have the two papers dealing with the location of this particular statue of Arthur Ashe, and we have finally the paper that deals with the creation of the Sports Hall of Fame and possibly an Arthur Ashe park in connection with that. And hopefully that clarifies the papers that we have in front of us.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. The copies of each resolution will be available to the members of the audience. They are still in the print shop of City Hall. In the informal session, some changes were made to a number of them, and it was not our desire that you receive a copy without the changes. And so, as we speak, they're in the print shop, and they will be available to all of you. The clerk is going to read in the resolutions for tonight, and after she enters the resolutions for tonight, then we will be ready for discussion, and we will start with members of the Ashe family.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Point of clarification. I had agreed to support item resolution 223 regarding the Monument Avenue commemoration of African Americans who have led the human rights movement in Virginia. My name is not attached to that, but the contingency was that only if item Resolution 95-225 did not pass. So I would like to, at any event, have my name attached to, as co-patron, item 223.
Duly noted, Mr. Richardson. Thank you for that comment.
And they will be called in the sequence of the last digit, 23, 22, 3, 4, and 5.
That's correct, sir. Please note, prior to your comments, that you have the right, if you so desire, to speak in favor of more than one item. To support one does not mean that you cannot support the other. The three of the items read would probably be supported by a number of different people, and so I don't want you to be of the opinion that you have to choose between one or the other, or that you are limited in discussion to the items presented. If you have additional ideas, we would certainly be blessed by hearing those from you.
I think, however, Mr. Mayor, 222 and 225 are mutually exclusive.
They are. They are. Madam Clerk?
And as the Vice Mayor, I'm going to read the papers into the record. I think the Vice Mayor has read them in their entirety. The first one is Resolution number 95-R222, patrons Mayor Young, Vice Mayor Conrad, Mr. Brooks, and Mr. Chavis, to approve the site at the Boulevard at Byrd Park as the location for the Arthur Ashe Memorial Statue and Monument, and to change the name of the boulevard at Byrd Park to Arthur Ashe Boulevard. The second resolution before Council...
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. For the clarity of the public, is it any way that, because on our resolutions we have 95R222, is it any way we can refer to paper 1, 2, 3, and 4, just for the clarity of the audience? And make 222 just paper number 1?
Let's refer to them as paper 2, 3, 4, and 5, Mr. Richardson, instead of 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Very good.
Using the last digit of each resolution.
2, 3.
And the second paper before council's consideration is resolution number 95-R223, patrons, Vice Mayor, the Vice Mayor, Mayor Young, Mr. Brooks, Mr. Chavis, and Mr. Richardson, concerning a plan of development for a statue on Monument Avenue to commemorate African Americans who have led the human rights movement in Virginia and in this nation. The third paper, a resolution number 95-R224, patrons, Mayor Young, Vice Mayor Conrad, Mr. Brooks, and Mr. Chavis, concerning the development of an Arthur Ashe Park in downtown Richmond and making it the home of an African American Sports Hall of Fame. And the last paper, paper number 4, resolution number 95-R225, patrons, Mrs. Baskerville and Mr. Richardson, to approve the intersection of Roseneath Avenue and Monument Avenue as the location for the Arthur Ashe Memorial Statue and Monument. And Mr. Mayor, before we proceed, we would need a motion to expedite consideration of all three of these papers.
So
Mr.
moved.
Mayor. Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Jones.
Excuse me. As Mr. Richardson had done, I would like to...
Could you turn your mic on, Mr. Jones?
It is on. I would like to ask that resolution R223 and R224 reflect myself as a patron.
Certainly. Thank you, sir.
So Mr. Jones is being added as a patron on resolution numbers 223 and 224.
Yes, I was inadvertently omitted from those two.
So noted.
23 and 24. Yeah, that's the...
And Mr. Mayor, there's a motion on the floor Mr. Richardson has made for expedited consideration of the 4 resolutions. And we're voting now to expedite consideration. Mrs. Baskerville?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks? Mr. Chavis? Mr. Conrad? Ms. Harvey?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Kane? Mr. Richardson?
Aye.
And Mr. Mayor?
Aye.
Ayes 8, noes none. The papers are before you.
Thank you. And now to go to the public hearing. As I have mentioned before, there are members of the Ashe family present, and we are honored with their presence tonight. We hold all of them in high esteem because individually they have made significant contributions to our city. I would like for their representatives singularly to come up now, as the family has decided that they would have them come up.
Mr. Mayor, you did receive a note that they 5
It will be
minutes.
done.
Thank you.
Out of deference to the members of the family, a request has been made that we suspend for them the 2-minute rule. Please know that that has been duly noted.
Good evening, Mayor Young, council persons, and to all who deem these proceedings important. I am Arthur's brother, Johnny Ashe, Captain, United States Marine Corps, retired. Arthur is an internationally renowned as a fighter for rights and the dignity of mankind who happened to use the tennis racket as a vehicle to get to college. It was a pure juxtaposition of events that allowed him to be around when the era of big money, a winning Davis Cup team, ushered in opportunity. The rest is history, a well-documented history, I might add. So much of that history is centered around and is driven by the city of Richmond and the state of Virginia. Reverend Andrew Young put it best at Arthur's homecoming that sunny day in February when he said, "It took a long time for Richmond to produce an Arthur Ashe." That matter of history brings us to this point in time in the history of Richmond, Virginia, a history that is being written and judged as we speak. The Avenue of Monuments probably costs the taxpayers of Richmond somewhere between $800,000 and $1 million a year to maintain in its present state. It now glorifies Civil War heroes, heroes of that era. They fought a war of hypocrisy. They fought a war they truly believed in to preserve their way of life, a way of life their forefathers came here to flee from, that of servitude, religious persecution, and an inability to speak freely. It is said that of adversity is born virtue and uncommon valor. Just as the heroes now glorified on the Avenue of Monuments, fought for what they believed in that era of history in these United States. Arthur R. Ashe Jr. fought for what he believed in his era of history with dignity. Arthur's history started when he was denied the right to play at Byrd Park in sanctioned United States Lawn Tennis Association tournaments. Then a year later, he won the National Interscholastics, that year played at the University of Virginia. Poetic justice, or just another juxtaposition of events. During this era of history, in Richmond, Virginia, believe me, the whole world is watching. Virginia made history by electing Honorable L. Douglas Wilder, the first American of color, to the position of governor. To the rest of the world, the capital of the Confederacy had finally put the dark era of history behind it. Has it? Doug Wilder's name is respected for what he accomplished. The name Arthur Ashe Jr. is revered for what he accomplished, for what he stood for, what he fought for, and the quiet dignity that is the hallmark of his life, the essence of his being. If Arthur Ashe Sr. were alive, he would be reduced to tears because the city that he and the citizens that he served for over 25 years of fighting. If Arthur were alive, he would be thoroughly disgusted to know that this is happening and would not want anything to do with it. As I read published accounts and listen to the debate, I ask myself, Arthur, hero? Yes, he is a hero. The city of Richmond and the state of Virginia has so proclaimed the fact, but the question still remains whether he has paid the price to be remembered and placed with other heroes on the Avenue of Monuments. The world is watching. Will this become a modern-day war of hypocrisy, or will the city of Richmond do the right thing? There are times in life when politics have to be set aside and peoples of an era have to do the right thing. I think this is one of those times. The Ashe and Cunningham families, after much deliberation, soul-searching, have determined that Monument Avenue is the best place for the statue for Arthur Robert Ashe Jr. Thank you.
All right.
We thank you, sir. I understand there's another member of the family. Please come forth.
Members of council, good evening. My name is Randy Ashe, and I have been a lifelong resident of the city of Richmond. I am a member of the Virginia Heroes Organization and the Arthur Ashe Monument Site Selection Committee. The Ashe and Cunningham families are here tonight to air its decision on site selection, and more importantly, to assist in removing the cloud and controversy that now surrounds our city. The family has been bombarded with calls and requests for interviews from media all over the world. Members of council, the media is not interested in the Arthur Ashe Monument. They are interested in the controversy generated by the Monument Avenue site selection. They are interested in a city that has once denied Arthur Ashe Jr. as a child and is attempting to do so again in death. Despite of Richmond, Arthur Ashe transcended the boundaries of race and went on to make a pretty good name for himself. But more importantly, he used his fame combined with his scholarly character and quiet diplomacy to combat racism and inequities throughout the world. Arthur Ashe Jr. was an athlete, scholar, humanitarian, who always strived for excellence. And it is now time to honor our most famous native son, as he has so graciously honored us with the memories of his life. Members of council, the Ashe and Cunningham families fully support the Monument Avenue site selection for the Arthur Ashe Jr. statue, as proposed by the Site Selection Committee and approved by the Richmond Planning Commission. And we are requesting that each of you, Mayor Young, Councilman Kane, Councilman Richardson, Councilman Chavis, Councilwoman Baskerville, my representative, Councilwoman Harvey, Councilman Conrad, and Councilman Jones do so as well. Thank you very much. Mr. Mayor, with your permission, we would like for Paul D. Pasquale to come forward, the sculptor of the statue.
Permission granted, sir.
Thank you, Randy. Richmond City Council. Arthur Ashe is an example of a modern hero and a modern leader, and mostly a modern civil peace leader. President Mandela knows it, Bishop Tutu knows it, and the world knows it. Richmond, Virginia stands ready to permanently and historically acknowledge it, and the world is here to watch it. Welcome to Richmond, Virginia world. Civil War leaders, Richmond, Virginia. Richmond civil peace leader, Arthur Ashe. We all cry watching fresh civil wars erupt anew around our world. Brother fighting and killing brother. Neighbor fighting and killing neighbor. Fresh cuts, fresh tears at the moral muscle of our collective spiritual body. We are on the brink of a bold and symbolic step here in Richmond, Virginia, from Civil War monuments to a civil peace monument. No wonder the world is here to watch. Richmond's magnificent avenue of world-class monuments has been reserved for leaders of the past, Civil War leaders. Tonight, we wait and witness the past united with the present in order to inspire the future. This so very public hearing allows you, Richmond City Council, to open this city and this great man to the world and acknowledge the value of a civil peace leader. Civil War to civil peace. Arthur Ashe stood for peace. Arthur Ashe stood for unity. Arthur Ashe stood for the world's children and for the world's future. Arthur Ashe's monument, carrying the message that he requested, will stand for all this at the Monument Avenue site, for everyone, for the world, for Richmond, Virginia. Welcome back to all of Richmond, Virginia, Arthur Robert Ashe, Jr. Thank you. My request, Mr. Mayor, would be that fundraising chairman, co-chairman Tom Tuning would have a chance to speak at this time.
Request granted.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, the City Council. I'm Thomas N. Tuning. I'm the co-chairman of the fundraising committee and also on the site selection committee. Tonight you have a choice to make between leadership and politics. You must choose either to do the right thing, to do the best Richmond can do, to honor Arthur Ashe, or do something less positive, more compromising, and less elegant than Arthur deserves. The site selection committee looked at nearly every possible location, including Byrd Park, and concluded that a Monument Avenue site was the most appropriate for the statue. As Councilman Kane was quoted in the New York Times, quote, "Monument Avenue will be an appropriate place now, and 20 years from now, and 200 years from now," unquote. Probably the biggest disappointment to those of us privileged to know Arthur has been the number of people who simply don't believe Arthur deserves the status of Monument Avenue. No matter where the statue is finally erected, I urge all of you to educate yourself on what a remarkable human being Arthur Ashe Jr. was. Read one of his many books. View HBO's production, Arthur Ashe, Citizen of the World. Or perhaps, if you have the opportunity, ask former New York Mayor David Dinkins or Nelson Mandela to give you their evaluation of the significance of his life. Listen to this description. His fame rests on his achievements in the face of many obstacles and on his outstanding personal character. He won the admiration and respect of supporters and opponents. Although he fought hard for his beliefs, the struggle did not make him intolerant. He fought not for personal gain, but to prove himself worthy of a cause. I know all of you would recognize this to describe Arthur Ashe. Is this worthy of a statue on Monument Avenue? I sure hope so, because these are actually the words chosen by the World Book Encyclopedia to describe General Robert E. Lee. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you, sir. Now, though it is a breach of the rules that have already been stated, I think it is an allowable breach. All of us should, and I believe all of us do, hold the members of the Ashe family in the highest esteem. We are also sympathetic, though because our personal experience does not equal that of theirs, to all that they have had to endure since the death of Arthur Ashe and all of the crisis that became a part of his life. And I want Richmond to show them how much we appreciate the burden that they have had to bear and the sacrifices that they have had to make. And I want Richmond to show them our true love for all of them and our thanksgiving for their sacrifice and for the sacrifice of Arthur Ashe by giving them a standing ovation. Again, thank you, and may God bless each and every one of you. So that you might better understand all that has been proposed tonight, Mr. Robert Easter, who represents one of the local architectural firms, who has also a rendering that expresses the sentiments of one of the papers before you, is present. We would call now upon Mr. Robert Easter to discuss his rendering. Following Mr. Easter's discussion, please keep in mind that the 2-minute rule will be in effect, and it will be enforced by the clerk.
Mr. Mayor, while he's coming down, there are some seats that are available in the audience. If we might have some of the young ladies that are standing over in the corner might want to take a seat.
Thank you, Ms. Harvey. There are seats, and ladies, if you would so desire, I am certain that the people who are blocking them wouldn't mind. Matter of fact, if you could, if you are sitting near a seat and no one is sitting in it, would you just move down a bit so that others could get in? Would you be so kind as to do that? If you're sitting near a seat that's not occupied, move all the way down and clear the seats at the end. Thank you, Ms. Harvey. Yes, you are. And gentlemen, if you want to be gallant, some of you can. Okay. Mr. Easter, would you proceed, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Bob,
members of council. Some years ago, as a struggling tennis wannabe, I watched Arthur Ashe take center court at Wimbledon. Frankly, at that time, I was a Jimmy Connors fan. And I was a little nervous about the outcome because the experts said he was overmatched, beyond his prime, and out of his league. But despite the fearful sentiments of the public, Arthur Ashe prevailed. Not because of any brutish approach to the game, but because he analyzed and evaluated his opponent, found the weakness in his armor, and he slayed the dragon. Because he had the heart of a champion, and he had the mind of a conqueror. Arthur Ashe was not afraid to fight. He was not afraid of competition. Some years later, in this very building, on this very floor, I had the privilege of meeting Arthur Ashe. To hear him convey his vision of a sports hall of fame to be erected in this city to honor the achievements of his heroes and contemporaries, the African Americans of sport. And this for him was not a selfish ambition, but a monument to the history, culture, education, and achievement of those who he followed. Arthur Ashe was a competitor and he sought to win, but his vision for the city was not mired by the past, nor corrupted by it. I don't think he would have held a public debate on the erection of a Hall of Fame, and I'm sure that he would not have held a public debate on the erection of his statue. I believe he would have asked the question, what is the right thing to do? And when he heard the answer, he would have said, then go and pursue that. And in that spirit, I would propose that we not seek the most amicable solution, but the most beneficial one that mirrors his humanity, his integrity, his intellect, his vision, and his tenacious desire to win. And in that spirit, I propose that the monument to Arthur Ashe be incorporated with his vision for an African American Sports Hall of Fame in a park setting that provides an economic, educational, and cultural benefit to the city. In the grand scheme of economic developments, you have monuments that are spread throughout a city, and vitality comes in the areas between those magnets. And what we have proposed is a park that would be located on the corner of Broad Street and Broad Street and 5th Street. And we have developed two drawings that depict the park. It's divided into two sections, the first being the Hall of Fame and the second being a park area, which speak to the two areas of history that Arthur Ashe was successful in, both sports and his social, political, academic, and humanitarian expertise. And I would like at this time to show the drawing.
I think the members of council have it. So if you could turn around and let the audience see it while we view the smaller ones that we have.
Again, the location of this, with 5th Street being a primary access to the city of Richmond, getting beyond the Marriott, you have a focal view of the entire park area. And 6th Street Marketplace, Carpenter Center being in their current locations, you have on the opposite end of that large block the African American Sports Hall of Fame. The park is not just a tribute to athletics, but a tribute to humanitarian contributions, opportunities to sit, reflect, and in the building a tribute to the 3 volumes of work that Mr. Ashe achieved in his one of his first publications, depicting the history of African Americans in sports in America. And I believe that this part would fulfill his dream and vision for the city. And that is why we have undertaken this effort.
Thank you, Mr. Easter. For members of the media as well as for members of the audience who would like to be able to view those architectural renderings, they will be on display after the public hearing. Madam Clerk, I want you to proceed in the order that you have, and the 2-minute rule is now enforced. I want to reinforce the statements of the clerk. We want you to act in fine Richmond fashion and to be dignified and specific in regards to your presentation.
Henrietta D. Cook. Henrietta D. Cook.
Proceed, Madam Clerk. Is Ms. Cook here? If Ms. Cook is here, if she would raise her hand.
She's on her way down. Mr. Mayor, as Ms. Cook comes down, I'll call the next group of names so you know which order you're in.
Sure.
Following Ms. Cook will be Mr. Pat Hudgens, Mary Lou Carr, Barbara Ross, Elizabeth Steele Foreman, and Victor Motley. Ms. Cook, pull your mic down before you begin. Thank you.
Mayor Young, on the council. Actually, I don't really know what I'm supposed to do now. I didn't expect all of this. I thought we came here just to vote on these 2 things. So what do I do? Just read what I have?
Yeah, we want to hear.
Hopefully it's in connection with what you all are doing here, because actually I'm not familiar. I'm going to be frank with you.
We want to hear, Ms. Cook, your opinion on where you think the statue should go.
All right, then. I'm going to read what I wrote. I'm hoping that you will allow me to read it, because it's not 1 or 2 lines as to say, I want this or that. In my opinion, it is not wise to demolish 2 buildings in good condition for the sole purpose of creating a park to be the site for Arthur's statue. We would like to save the 2 buildings. The department store are needed there. The statue deserves a better location, such as Monument Avenue at Rosenleaf Road, as planned. Why move Christopher Columbus statue? It was in place long before any of us were born. It also is a part of history. The owner of the Tallhammer building is following through with opening a department store there as planned, giving us a place to shop downtown. The people deserve better and more. To tear down 2 buildings to create a park is a waste of money. We don't need a park. We don't need office buildings. We do need department stores. I vote for Monument Avenue at Rosenleaf Road for all to see, and I hope the turmoil will end. Thank you.
No. Your applause are not allowed, but we do want Ms. Cook to know that we deeply appreciate her coming down and that her comments are significant. Emotional response, whether pro or con, are not permitted. Thank you. Come forth, sir.
And again, each speaker, please remember to state your name prior to making your comments.
My name is Pat Hudgens. I live in the 3400 block of Monument Avenue. Council, Mayor Young. It's not what you do, but rather how it is done that is important. Many here tonight, both pro and con, will use the emotional blanket to cover the truth, to obscure legitimate, sound reasons why this proposed site is not the best choice for the Ashe statue. First, it is my opinion that had this process been open and free of coercion and surprise, this issue may have been resolved with less controversy and hard feelings. This is not about justice or retribution for the past, nor is it about preserving the sanctity of past events. I even wonder if it's really about Arthur Ashe. I would like to see an advisory board made of citizens from all parts of the city, including individuals respected for the sense of art, history, and architecture, rough-in criteria as to who, where, and how any future proposals would be handled. This would ensure some continuity and purpose, therefore enhancing the appeal of Richmond, the city of monuments. Specifically, this contemporary rendering does not fit the surrounding neighborhood, which is on the state and federal historic register. This design was approved for another location, not in this neighborhood. Does an architect design a building without seeing the site? Because of the design for the base of the statue that I have seen has space for viewing and a wheelchair ramp, are we not inviting potential injury from fast-moving traffic as individuals try to gain access? Other criteria developed by the site committee, design not in conflict with other monuments, gateway into the city, compatibility with the neighborhood, creating a quiet, tranquil setting, and adequate parking are also in conflict with the proposed site. If, after this hearing, it is decided to use this site, then I strongly urge that the design be bid out to other artists and that such designs be more traditional and dignified, therefore in form and function be
Mr.
more
Hudgens, you should begin your summary at this point, sir. You
more
have 30
compatible
seconds.
with the neighborhood. I would also encourage placement of the monument in the intersection, making a drive-by monument, reducing the chance of injury. I would personally like to see the monument in Byrd Park, and I think another monument would be more appropriate at that site. Thank you.
Mary Lou Carr.
My name is Mary Lou Carr. I live in the 3300 block of Monument. Mr. Mayor and Council, I want to thank the city for having this hearing and taking time to hear the neighbors' views. Especially, I want to thank you for calling for a comprehensive plan for monuments, not only for my street, but for anywhere in the city. Our neighborhood has worked very hard to maintain its historic nature. Volunteers worked for years to obtain the city, state, and national historic designation for the portion of the avenue that ends at this intersection. We wanted this designation in order to control changes on the street and ensure its continued historic appearance. We've been working with the city for a year now to establish an urban design district for the portion of Monument beyond this intersection, as well as the rest of the neighborhood. New projects in this area will meet design guidelines that will blend with the historic character of the area. We believe that keeping our old and historic appearance promotes community spirit and helps preserve the stable, viable, and even progressive neighborhood that we are, and an asset to the city. Statues planned for the short space of Monument between the Stewart Monument and the Cannon should be planned for a quick glance by passing motorists zipping past, and they should not need any viewer support space or tranquil space or parking or pedestrian traffic areas. They should be compatible with the sculpture that's already on the street, and they should not be in casual dress or in contemporary style or of modern subjects. The proposed statue is not appropriate in this space any more than if the Browns Island boatman had a modern motor in his hand or if the Brave at the Diamond had a modern helmet on. Please find a space that will be special for Arthur Ashe himself. Thank you.
Barbara Ross.
Good evening, Mr. Young, Mr. Conrad, members of council, Mr. Bob. I am Barbara Rose. I come to you to speak tonight as president of the West of the Boulevard Civic Association. Our neighborhood of 5,000 households includes the intersection of Roseneath Road and Monument Avenue. Our board of directors wishes to thank you for recognizing the need for this hearing. Our association represents a neighborhood whose origins go back to the 1890s. The main growth of our neighborhood west of the boulevard was largely completed by 1930, at which time the last of the Monument Avenue statues was also completed. As a neighborhood, we have actively sought ways to ensure the stability and quality of life that have attracted our neighbors to the area, including a state and federally recognized designation as a historic district. We worked hard for that designation, and we are very proud of that designation. Our board of directors, indeed the majority of our neighbors, have the utmost respect for the accomplishments and the exemplary life of Arthur Ashe. We feel he is due the honor of having this fine statue in the appropriate place in Richmond. We respectfully submit that the intersection of Roseneath Road and Monument Avenue is not that place. We refer to the median site criteria established by the Arthur Ashe Memorial Committee, appointed by City Council. Of the 12 criteria mentioned, at least 6 do not comply. Our board is very concerned about the historic aspects, but perhaps is as equally concerned about the safety of pedestrians at this site and the encroachment of additional parking in a strictly residential area already overcrowded. In closing, please accept our gratitude for the opportunity to be heard in the correct forum. In particular, your suggestion to the Planning Commission to develop a master plan for Monument Avenue and statues in general has our solid support. We ask as you begin this process that you stress up front the need to open any design of any future statues to competition. We also ask that you stress the importance of the design of the statues and their compatibility with the surrounding neighborhood. I thank you.
Elizabeth Steele Foreman.
Good evening. My name is Liz Foreman, and I too live on Monument Avenue. My concern relates to the single reason given for the abrupt change of location from Hamilton to Roseneath, that Roseneath provides a safer place to park, get out, and have a moment with the monument. I may not fully understand the implications of this, but as a resident who lives at this intersection, I can tell you that a moment there is liable to be very dangerous, especially for a child. We've been told this monument is a bit different than the others, that it cannot be placed in the middle of the intersection, as that would be far too dangerous for pedestrians. The Hamilton site at least utilizes the center of its median, a little bit safer, but the center of the Roseneath median already has a small marker and special landscaping. So the specified site has to be at the end of the median, right at the edge of the, quote, dangerous intersection. The viewing area around the base allows for a little margin of error, and should a child let go of a parent's hand and move even a few steps away, it could very likely mean a serious injury or worse. A number of people feel the statue is too informal for such a traditional area, but I think it was designed that way, to be approachable, a hands-on type of experience that would draw children and adults alike. Our little girl, who's almost 4, calls it the statue of the man with books who is teaching children. She calls the other monuments men on big horses. Maybe that sums it up. Maybe this design does give us something to see more closely and talk about. But car counters don't make a safety study. They can't see the ambulances and fire engines, the cars that speed, roll through the crosswalk, and run the red light at Roseneath every day. Please give us and our children a safer place on Monument or otherwise to learn more about a man who was indeed a great warrior and a true Southern gentleman. Thank you.
Victor Motley. Is Mr. Motley present? Okay.
My name is Victor Motley, and I guess I'm one of the few who never knew Mr. Ashe. I never met the man. But as I sit here and I listen, it seemed like, who was really Mr. Ashe? I mean, as I hear people talk, it seems like they want to put up a statue to show what he hated, not what he loved. And to me, the man, there was 3 things the man loved: his family, his country, and tennis. And I believe the best thing for the statue would be at Bird Park at center court, between the flagpole and the tennis court, because there you're going to show 3 things: You're going to show he loved his family, because what is a park? It's for the family. Second, he loved his country, the flag flying behind him. And third, most of all, he loved tennis. He loved to teach tennis. And when the little kids go there, no matter what race they are, when they go there to play tennis, what's the first thing they're going to see? The statue of Arthur Ashe. And they're going to say, hey, I want to be like him. I want to win Wimbledon. I want to win the U.S. Open. It might inspire them. And then when you have your tennis tournaments, what's the first thing people are going to see? That statue of Arthur Ashe represent tennis, but also represent the man. I thank you.
Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I would not necessarily for myself because I understand it, but I would be very concerned that the kind of comments have been misconstrued. I have not heard anyone allude to anything about what Mr. Ashe hated. Mr. Ashe exemplified, if there are any of us in this room, he exemplified the integrity and the constraint, and if he had any hate, we would have never seen it. So I really, on behalf of the family who knew him and some of us, we would really like an understanding or to at least clarify that it's an inappropriate statement to say he was put up there to represent what he hated. On behalf of the family, I just say that that was totally inappropriate. Ashe was not a man, and this statue does not represent hate in any wise.
Walter Thomas Kinney is next, followed by Chella Minor, Harry Bradley, Michael P. Cummings Jr., August Moon, and Henry C. Gerard.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mayor, members of council and the Ashe family, my name is Walter T. Kinney. I'm here again to reiterate and urge City Council to, one, rename the boulevard Arthur Ashe Boulevard, beginning at the intersection of South Boulevard and Grant Street near the Bird Park Tennis Courts area, along the boulevard northerly to the intersection and circle at North Boulevard, Hermitage Road, Brooklyn Parkway, and Westwood Avenue, a total of approximately 2.3 miles of the boulevard. Two, that a statue of Arthur be erected in the circle at North Boulevard, Hermitage Road, Brooklyn Parkway, and Westwood Avenue. The boulevard has diversity like no other street in our city. Racially, home ownership, apartment complexes, museums, places of worship, the Diamond, and sure, the Arthur Ashe Athletic Center, and all kinds of business and professional persons, including a statue in a circle at the Boulevard and Monument Avenue intersection. Interested persons have called me and spoken to me in person, and approximately 98% or more of those persons from very diverse backgrounds prefer a site other than the site proposed at Roseneath Road and Monument Avenue, or any other site on Monument Avenue. So why not the boulevard? P.S. Don't forget, the Visitors Center is located on Robin Hood Road. It's less than 2 blocks from the boulevard and the I-95 ramps and the Arthur Ashe Center. Thank you very much.
Mr. Kinney, you are aware that the Boulevard and Monument Avenue intersection is where Stonewall Jackson currently stands.
I didn't want to identify it in that fashion. I know it's a statue.
You want us to move him?
No.
Chella Minor. Harry Bradley.
Mr. Mayor and the Honorable City Council and the members of the Ashe family. The salute due Arthur Ashe and the location of the statue is proposed as follows. Short range, number 1, locate the Arthur Ashe statue at 9th and Broad Street here, diagonally across the corner from City Hall. The fact that this site is state property lends itself to an alliance between the city and the state to jointly honor a native son. I have contacted the governor's office and have been assured that a feasibility study will be conducted. This downtown location would be most feasible and accessible to the hundreds of citizens and tourists who come to visit our state capital. And more people visit the state capitol in Broad Street than visit Monument Avenue. Number 2, Arthur Ashe Boulevard. In tune with the proposed location of the Arthur Ashe statue on Broad Street, it appears congruent to rename Broad Street Arthur Ashe Boulevard. Long range. The best location for the Afro-American Sports Hall of Fame would be Maggie L. Walker High School. Arthur Ashe attended Maggie L. Walker High School. The Afro-American Sports Hall of Fame at Maggie L. Walker is a vision for eliminating the horrible eyesore and insult to black history, given the fact that Maggie L. Walker High School was a salute to Mrs. Maggie L. Walker's life accomplishments, most notably being the first woman president of a bank in the USA. The last long-range salute to Arthur Ashe would be to submit Arthur Ashe's name for a United States Postal commemorative stamp. Finally, to follow the will of the people, put the Monument Avenue question on the next May City Council election ballot as an advisory referendum item. I thank you.
Michael P. Cummings, Jr. And again, following Mr. Cummings will be August Moon, Henry C. Gerard, Todd Blanton, Willie Williams III, and Robert W. Waite.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, my name is Michael Cummings. I live at 3407 Monument Avenue. If the site selected for the statue is at Rosemead and Monument, it would be almost at my front door, and I fully support that. I think the commission has given serious consideration to the proper sites. This site has a number of advantages. The median is wide enough to accommodate a statue. There are no tall trees in that block that would obscure a view of the statue, and you don't have to move another statue to put the second statue up. The heroes whom I admire, who have statues on Monument Avenue, represented one of the bloodiest areas in Virginia's history. It cost us dearly in blood and treasure to fight that war. And I can't see that we need to preserve a warlike atmosphere simply for historic reasons on Monument Avenue. I believe we could have modern heroes on Monument too, and I would urge that you put it there. Arthur Ashe brought great honor to this city. He promoted peace and reconciliation. I think a statue to him at this point would go a long ways toward providing reconciliation and promoting the idea of peace in this city. I think it'll be a sad day when both the committee's recommendation is turned down and the desires of the Ashe family are ignored. Thank you very much.
I would caution again, no applause. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cummings, for expressing your opinion.
Mr. Moon is next.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is August Moon. I'm here today, and I'd like to say I wish Arthur Ashe's soul rest in peace. I respect him as a champion of the tennis court, mankind, a humanitarian, an icon, and a hero. City Council called for community input, and I've done 6 shows around the Arthur Ashe location of the statue. We have had the mayor on the show, Tim Kaine, Councilman Chuck Richardson, and many others to discuss this issue. Overwhelmingly, the people choose to place it either at Byrd Park or Arthur Ashe Center. Looking at the rendering of the proposed Hall of Fame, there's a ball diamond next to the Arthur Ashe Center. His tall hammers cannot work its way out that the city owns. There's already flat land. You don't have to buy it. You don't have to ravish it. If we cannot work out the tall hammers deal, I would propose that we can place it there. Also, I would like to say the way I see Arthur Ashe, I see him as a hero in my eyesight. I want my hero statue to be as big as Lee's statue, if not bigger. To be smaller would take away from Mr. Ashe in my eyesight.
to put my hero on a plot of grass and put their hero in the center of the street, but saying my hero is secondary. I want Mr. Ashe to be as big as all outdoors. I don't want nobody to take nothing away from him. If you do go to Bird Park and you're going to move my dear friend Christopher, who I ride by, been elected, rejected, and kicked to the curb, y'all have not refurbished him since he been there. Don't say you have. I want y'all to move Christopher to the north end of Lee Bridge, right in that Meridian Strip, right across from the Civil War Museum. Give him a facelift and don't mistreat him no more. I rode by the day and he said, Moon, speak on my behalf. All I can say to the Ashe family, I know Arthur. He was a great man. I hate to see all of this have to take place, and I believe in letting the dead rest in peace. And may Arthur's soul may rest in peace, and may the final rest in place no matter where it at. I will respect it because it's all a reflection of the great work and what he stood for in his lifetime. My brothers and sisters, today, I wish that everybody would understand that no matter where you put it, I would like to see the Hall of Fame. My vision of Arthur is a big Taj Mahal. That's how big Arthur was to me. He might not mean that to others, but that's what he meant to me. Please reconsider another statue to put someplace if you're going to put it. This statue a little too small for what Arthur meant to me. Arthur bigger than Lee.
Mr. Moon?
He bigger than Stewart. I'm going, darling. I see the lights. I know the route.
Henry C. Gerard Sr. is next.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Bob, members of council, to the Ashe family, my name is Henry C. Gerard Sr. I live at 2404 Hawthorne Avenue, place where the late Mr. Arthur Ashe played tennis in Battery Park. That's a beautiful park there, and my two sons learned to play tennis in Battery Park. My oldest son won a gold medal in the youth games in 1974 representing this city in Boston, Massachusetts. My youngest son learned tennis in Battery Park and played for the University of Pittsburgh while he did his undergraduate work there. I wish to express my deep appreciation and gratitude to the city for giving us this opportunity to express ourselves and for this Arthur Ashe statue. I have a lot of love and respect for the family, although I've not met a member of the family. I met his father. I come today to represent my opposition to the monument location. Arthur chiefly was a sports hero of the greatest magnitude that anyone can imagine. And I do not see placing his statue on Monument Avenue. I stand here to say that I would like to see the monument placed at the Bird Park site or at the Arthur Ashe Center. I also would like to say that the proposed ordinance for the Sports Hall of Fame would be a great thing. Thank you very much.
Todd Blanton is next. Todd Blanton. Willie Williams III.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, to the family. My name is Willie Williams III. I'm engaged in business in the city of Richmond. I lived in Jackson Ward, which was not too far from the tennis courts, where I had occasion to meet Arthur's father, became friends, and Also, I saw Arthur Ashe was at the Imperial Council session, who were invited by then Lieutenant Governor Wilder and myself and Arthur Ashe. Got a chance to talk to him then. But believe me, I have gone through a lot of toil with everyone else, I suspect, and trying to figure out what I said tonight. I began to take all the things that was on the table, and many of them were my own personal feelings. And I decided to move those things out of the way so I could really get to the heart of the matter. And after moving most of those things away, I found there was only about 4 items left. And that was the family, the architecture, the planning commission, which you talked about, and my own view. Which brings me to the point of saying that I really like the idea of the park. I don't know how feasible it is to have for the park, because we need to have something of that magnitude. What I'm for as a secondary choice is the Monument Avenue site. We have to have vision, and vision would be what that park would be. It would be similar to what you have in Atlanta, Martin Luther King's, a whole block or a whole area. So I'll leave you with those two. I think since Mr. Mayor, you said there was 2 items you could say it, so there are 2 items I'm speaking of, next to the park and with the Rosemead Monument Avenue. Thank you.
Robert W. Waite is next. Following Mr. Waite is Charles Nunn, Waverly Crawley, Greg Johnson, and Guy M. Kinnaman, Jr.
Robert W. Waite, 4509 Fitzhugh Avenue, 5th generation native Richmonder. We have 141 memorials to celebrities in Richmond. Only one to a native-born Richmonder, Bill Bojangles Robinson. Arthur Ashe would be just the second. How sad we neglect so many of our great Richmonders. Where is their monument to 3-time Mayor John Beckley, who as first Secretary of the United States Congress wrote its protocols and rules still used by Congress today, for whom West Virginia named a city. Or Mayor Anthony Michael Cowley, 16 years Chief Justice of the Supreme Court in Cairo, Egypt. Or great writers like James Branch Cabell in Glasgow, or heroic women like Elizabeth Van Lew and Mary Elizabeth Bowser. Or the eminent black state legislator Ballard Edwards, who saved our historic state capitol building from being torn down. Or Lewis Powell. But this roll call of Richmond's and models could go on and on and on. We have Monument Avenue, not Civil War Monument Avenue. In its 4.9 miles, only 1.1 contains a mere 5 statues, all to Civil War figures, none of whom spent very much time within this city, and none were natives. You are distinguished custodians of Richmond's heritage. Why not change Monument Avenue from a fantasy into a truly avenue of monuments, with Arthur Ashe's monument as the first of many, which will begin a great, beautiful municipal parkway of homage to those who brought international fame to our beloved city. In closing, just let me say, if we do not choose Monument Avenue, we will be saying to the world that Arthur Ashe was not good enough to be on that street. Thank you for your attention.
Charles Nunn is next.
Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, I'm Charles B. Nunn, Jr., a native of Richmond, and have served as Executive Director of Missions of the Richmond Baptist Association for the past 18 years, whose office is located in the 3100 block of Mossad Avenue. Long before there was public discussion about the location of the Arthur Ashe statue, shortly after Christmas I wrote a letter to Mayor Leonidas Young and shared with him a feeling that we had in our own family, that we gathered as we went to the Nativity pageant at Byrd Park on Christmas Eve. It was a feeling that Arthur Ashe should, his monument statue should rest adjacent to the tennis courts in Byrd Park. But more than that, that there ought to be a corridor dedicated to Arthur Ashe, which would begin there on the boulevard that intersects with Westwood Avenue and Hermitage Road, that would extend all the way back to Byrd Park, and the street, the boulevard, would be renamed Arthur Ashe Boulevard. 6 months or more have passed. Well, the mayor, members of city council, we still feel the same way. We still feel that this is the best location. It would provide the greatest exposure within the meaning for which he stood as a tennis star, a humanitarian, and most especially, which I hope we will not miss, a wonderful example, especially for young people here in Richmond and around the world. Thank you very much.
Waverly Crawley. Following Mr. Crawley will be Greg Johnson, Guy N. Kinman Jr., Roger Kirby, Mrs. William B. Adamson, and Reverend Robert Pettis.
Mayor Young, Councilman Bob, and the rest of council person. As I stood in the audience, I was amazed because nobody mentioned Arthur Ashe being placed in the black community. I represent, as the Honorable Mayor of 2nd Street, I represent the Jackson Ward area. What would be more feasible than Arthur Ashe statue around the perimeter of the Jackson Ward? For a number of reasons. It would be easy to get to. Number two, Afro-American children could easy, when I say easy get to, they cannot go up on Roseneath Avenue because the parents are low developed, they're under salary, they can't afford to go up on Roseneath and Monument. I oppose the park located downtown. I can see it is a haven for Daleks, and we could use that land for something more valuable. Now, as for the Sports Hall of Fame, I am interested in, will it be an international Hall of Fame or will it be a local Hall of Fame? There is a difference. I was told once by a city manager it would be in the historic Jackson Ward area. Now I hear that it's going to be on 4th and Broad. I hope that you'll have your priorities. Again, to the Ashe family, I support you because I was taught that whatever the family values want, it should be granted. They want it up on Monument Avenue, so it shouldn't be no question about it. But me, I oppose of it because I think his statue could be more useful in the Jackson Ward area, could create tourism, brighten up the neighborhood, and etc. So I hope that City Council will consider the perimeter of Jackson Ward area for the statue of Arthur Ashe. Thank you.
Mr. Crawley?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Crawley, that issue had been considered very seriously, but about 3 years ago when we started talking about the idea of an African American, it became very poignantly clear that our symbols represent what we are. And what we did not want to do was to go back to segregation, to say that because he was African American that we would have to place him in an African American community. We were mindful of it, but we wanted to advance ourselves in terms of an integration of our symbols and therefore a truly integrated society. We outlawed the segregation of schools in 1954, and somehow when we come to the conclusion that we ought to segregate our statues, we suddenly buy into the groundwork for a segregated mentality and whatever may come after that. So we don't want to divide our statues or symbols on the basis of color. That's kind of moving backwards. He was a man of all the people, and our finest area was where he deserved to be, regardless of what color or what the predominance of that community was.
Mr. Richardson, I disagree with you. What happened to Bo Jenkins? Why didn't you integrate him?
He lived from that area.
Well, Arthur Ashe lived in that area too, but I still think that he should come home to roost. Another place I recommend is at Allen and Broad, right across from the Free Press, the gateway to the historical Jackson Ward. Thank you.
Greg Johnson is next.
My name is Greg Johnson. I recently moved to Monument Avenue, one house west of the corner of Roseneath and Monument. And I've been very pleased tonight to see some of my neighbors for the first time. I apologize to council for this brief digression, but I'm sure my neighbors must be as disappointed as I am with the media coverage of this particular debate. I've watched them pull their satellite vans in front of my house and wait for news to be lobbed in their direction. I've watched them amplify the loudest voices and look for the divisive individuals, look for the ones who are seeking the most publicity, and I hope that in their representation of this debate tonight, they show some of the thought that has gone into these opinions, that it is not a cut and dried issue. There are lots of different opinions, and it is not as simple as they have portrayed it to be. I came here tonight to speak in favor of the Arthur Ashe Monument. I would be delighted to see it in front of my house. I do have reservations if it's intended to be a pedestrian monument. I agree with my neighbors that the traffic there is very heavy, that the parking is very limited. There are ambulances, there are fire trucks. So if it is intended to be a monument that's accessible to pedestrians and supposed to be interacted with, then perhaps that would not be the ideal location. But I'm also in favor of renaming the boulevard and having it in Bird Park if the monument is intended to be something that people interact with. My only hesitation tonight is with tearing down Miller Roads and Tallheimers, which I feel other uses could be found for. I know just a week ago the city had a very large debate about another park that wasn't paying for itself, and I'm not sure that we need to tear down two existing buildings that are adding to the tax rolls to create yet another park. But other than that, if the decision is to put the monument on Monument Avenue, that would be terrific with me. It would be directly in front of my house, and I'm all in favor of it.
Guy N. Kinman, Jr. Following Mr. Kinman will be Roger Kirby, Mrs. William B. Adamson, and Reverend Robert Pettis.
I'm Guy M. Kinman, Jr., and I live at 3301 Grove Avenue, and it's about 10 blocks from the Monument Avenue site. I would hope the City Council would not try to solve everything tonight, because I feel a little frustrated that you threw a couple of new resolutions to us about the Sports Hall of Fame, and that also the resolution that the mayor presented yesterday was only presented yesterday. At any rate, it seems to me that we haven't had all the time in the world to think this over. Be that as it may, I'd like to address the issue first of the statue itself. Wherever you put it, I like it. If it isn't quite big enough for somebody and it goes into another area, I say the architect can make it more. But I like it as a statue of today. I like it that the sculpture talked with Mr. Ashe. I like everything about it. And I don't think that we have to think that it is lesser if it's put on Monument Avenue, because it isn't on a horse. As far as I'm concerned, I came here tonight all in favor of Monument Avenue. And I really need modern heroes. He's my hero. And I'd like to have a modern hero on Monument Avenue. But I tell you right now, you've got to solve that transportation problem. Because I was there this morning during Governor Wilder's radio show, and I had to help a lady across the street, and a man that was on my right when I was on the midsection, a car came by honking. The main criteria, I hate to say it because it may knock out Monument Avenue, but my main criteria is that it can be the center for children. I like the fact that in Bird Park people can go and mill in various parts. They can go to Dogwood Dell. They can be there for the fireworks display. They can be at the tennis courts. They can be over by the duck pond. I'm all within walking distance of that. But I'm not throwing out Monument Avenue at all. If you can figure out a way in which the buses can park on Broad Street, it will be the revival of Broad Street. Because this is going to be one of the 3 or 4 most prominent, attractive things in the city of Richmond. If it's put in the right place, nobody's going to force a hero on anybody, and people are going to come by the thousands, regardless of what part of the country they live in. We have a great thing on our hands here. But if you want Monument Avenue, that's all right with me. But you're going to have to sell me, you're going to have a walkway over.
Mr. Kinman?
Absolutely.
Your time is up, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Roger Kirby is next.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Richmond City Council. My name is Roger Kirby. Mayor Young has demonstrated thoughtful and fair leadership during this now public discussion of where to memorialize and remember Arthur Ashe. However, I feel further public discourse should review any additional monuments as mentioned tonight by the Vice Mayor. If Richmond wishes to memorialize and remember Arthur Ashe, then a location associated directly with his achievements would be the most appropriate. Arthur Ashe is most notably and widely remembered as an outstanding tennis player who overcame great adversity to succeed. He was and is admired by many. I would like to see City Council approve the placement of his statue next to the tennis courts where he played and developed his game. There are many fine locations in Richmond for Arthur Ashe's statue besides Monument Avenue. Monument Avenue has never, and I believe should not, contain monuments to great athletes. We should not allow this statue to be used by some as a divisive political tool. This would be wrong to the memory of Arthur Ashe, wrong to Monument Avenue, and wrong for our great capital. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, the question. I need some help because how would a particular statue of a particular hero divide us?
It depends on how it's intended to be placed and what the intention is. And I think that's key. I think Arthur Ashe, as I say, it was a great man, but where you place it matters a lot. We can't deny the fact that Richmond was the Confederate capital.
But how does it divide us?
Well, if you believe that perhaps the man genuinely should be there, then that's one point of view. But I think that there are many people in the city of Richmond who also covet their ancestors and recognize the great service that they had to the Confederacy. And there is division there.
But this is 1995. We've all acknowledged that what they fought for was wrong. We respect them for their personal qualities of courage and perseverance, but we've acknowledged that that cause was wrong. And Arthur Ashe, he didn't ride a horse, or have a gun, or sword, but he was a hero to many people in Richmond. In fact, those that now constitute the majority of the population, I want to understand, but I don't see how, unless in our hearts we don't want him, I don't know how he could divide us.
Well, you and I have
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Jones.
If I may.
Thank you, sir. You may be seated.
Mr. Richardson, please indulge the speakers. If I were number 177, I'd probably be pretty angry with council right now. The folks who came down this evening to speak to us were given 2 minutes. That's bad enough. I think we should respect their right to come down and speak to us without interrupting them. It's not us who should be quizzing them. It is us who should be listening.
Mr. Mayor, I appreciate the wisdom and advice of my colleague, but this is a critical issue, and there are critical questions to be asked. And when we become afraid to try to learn as much as we can about why we are making this decision, then we are being derelict in our duty. I am not ashamed. This is a critical issue, and it's indicated by the number of people who have attended. We should not muffle you, nor should you deprive us of an ability to fully understand what you're saying to us.
Mr. Richardson, then I would suggest that we do as Mr. Mayor, just 1 second, please. I would suggest then to my colleague from the 5th District that should we have questions of citizens who have come down to talk, respect those citizens and our colleagues by pulling them off to the side and asking those questions.
Mr. Mayor.
Okay, just a minute.
I have been here 18 years, and I have worked it the way I will, and you try your way, Mr. Jones.
Council will take a 10-minute break.
William B. Adamson. Following Mrs. Adamson will be Reverend Robert Pettis, Brian Glass, Shirley A. Jackson, Robert H. Lamb, and Alice J. Stewart.
Good evening. My name is Norval Lamb Adamson. J. Amber Johnson, chairman of the Centennial Committee in 1965, indicated that if Richmond had not been the capital of the Confederacy, it would perhaps be no more well known than any other city in the state of its size. The introduction to the 1992 History of Monument Avenue begins with this statement: Monument Avenue in Richmond, Virginia is renowned as the South's grandest commemorative precinct dedicated to the heroes of the lost cause. I believe that our city would do well to preserve and perpetuate the avenue's uniqueness as a Confederate memorial. There are many other monument sites available in the city, and I'm in favor of locating the Arthur Ashe statue in Byrd Park. Thank you.
Reverend Robert Pettis, Reverend Robert Pettis, Brian Glass,
Members of City Council, I feel that this hearing should not be about Monument Avenue. It should be about Arthur Ashe and how to honor his memory and accomplishments. Arthur Ashe was a gentle warrior. He says it over and over in his book. He left Richmond in his senior year of high school because he couldn't play on the tennis courts at Byrd Park in city tournaments. There is no better statement to be made on his behalf than to have his monument overlooking those same tennis courts at the gateway to Byrd Park, our Central Park. This will be a testament to the change that has taken place in Richmond over the past 30-plus years. Arthur Ashe Boulevard. I agree with former Mayor Kenney to a point, and others, to change the name of the boulevard to Arthur Ashe Boulevard. I would also suggest that the African American Sports Hall of Fame, a, quote, project dear to my heart, end quote, should be placed on Arthur Ashe Boulevard. This would help to revitalize the area between the boulevard, between Arthur Ashe Center and Broad Street, and fulfill a dream on Arthur Ashe Boulevard. Picture the scenario, if you will. You exit I-64-95, a gateway to the city, and you pass the Arthur Ashe Center. You then pass the African American Sports Hall of Fame. And for those of you who can't get past Monument Avenue, you will pass Stonewall Jackson on Monument Avenue and Arthur Ashe Boulevard. You'll then reach the Virginia Historical Society, and Arthur Ashe was certainly a historian of note with his 3-volume book on the history of African Americans in sports. Then you'll pass the Virginia Museum of Art, which was a passion for Arthur Ashe. On the tennis tour, and he states it over in his book again, on the tour in Europe, his favorite pastime was to visit the great museums of the world. Indeed, he even shows that Rembrandt was one of his favorite artists. Finally, your trip would end at Byrd Park, and you'd see Arthur Ashe overlooking the tennis courts at Fountain Lake, on the way to Arts in the Park, on the way to the fireworks, and on the way to every major event, basically, that Richmond has to offer that's not on Browns Island or Downtown Presents. I'm sure that from wherever Arthur Ashe is at this time, there would be a quiet smile on his face and gladness in his heart if that would be the tribute to him. Thank you.
Shirley A. Jackson. Following Ms. Jackson will be Robert H. Lamb, Alice J. Stewart, Reverend Dr. Paige Chagoyas, Arnold Moore, Jim Slicer, and George Leadham.
Honorable Mayor and distinguished members of council, Arthur Ashe Jr. was a hero. A hero is a person who is admired by others for their bravery or for their achievements in life. Not all heroes will have the same accomplishments, and no hero is greater than another hero. Mr. Ashe served society through the excellence of his achievements. It is crucial for all of us to know and recognize all of our heroes and realize that the price they paid for all in the struggle for equality was not in vain. The Confederate soldiers fought against civil, social, political, and economic rights for the African Americans. If we can honor these 5 noble Confederate soldiers on Monument Avenue who fought for what they believe in, even though they were wrong, then certainly we can honor Mr. Ashe on Monument Avenue. Also, General Robert E. Lee was a hero to many people, even though he was charged with treason. General Lee never received amnesty, and his citizenship was never restored to him until after his death in 1975 by the United States Congress. Also in 1975, Mr. Ashe won the most prestigious event in men's tennis at Wimbledon. A hero is a hero, whether he is a defeated Confederate soldier or a great humanitarian who fought for equality for all. Mr. Ashe was an international tennis champion who was proud of America, and he wanted America to be proud of him. We are here not because of the Civil War. We are here to stand for a man's human rights. Mr. Ashe deserves to be on Monument Avenue because he is our hero. That's why we call it Monument Avenue. It's not Confederate Avenue. A winner is not always right. Thank you.
Robert H. Lamb is next.
Good day. My name is Robert H. Lamb. 7 generations of my family have lived in Richmond. In the Confederate Cemetery in Fredericksburg, among the graves of more than 3,500 Confederates, is a seemingly incongruous headstone of a U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel by the name of Warren Edwin Wan, who died in Vietnam on February the 7th, 1968. He had written with great respect about the men among whom he is now buried. Thus, his interment there was a lasting tribute from a kindred spirit. In short, it is fitting. Regardless of what significance attaches to the legacy of Arthur Ashe, it would be a flight of fancy to suggest that he viewed the heroic figures on the Monument Avenue as his kindred spirits. Given the context of his very gentle remarks regarding them on page 283 of his memoir, Days of Grace. Thus, in my view, his placement on Monument would not be fitting. Of course, unlike a very small number of proponents of such a site, who may be using the issue divisively as a political tennis ball, Ashe did not use incendiary language, nor did he disparage the Confederate heroes. In 1937, a suggestion was made that the Richmond Blues be honored by a statue on Monument Avenue, but it was greeted with a fierce opposition, despite its loyal service to the Confederacy. Why? Because the theme of Monument was, and should continue to be, the honoring of singular Confederate heroes. Procedurally, the aspects of the mayor's compromise proposal relating to a different non-Confederate monument on Monument Avenue should be tabled. There's been zero public input on that, and is not part of the advertised purpose of this hearing. It would be the political equivalent of having Solomon split the baby. On page 127 of his memoir, Arthur Ashe indicated that a long time ago he made peace with the state of Virginia and the South. Therefore, in deciding what to adopt and what to defer, council should remember that.
Mr. Lamb?
Yes.
Your time is up, sir.
Can I summarize as others have done?
You get 2 seconds.
All right. Should heed the injunction of John Randolph of Roanoke to never disturb a thing that is at rest. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. The next speaker is Alice J. Stewart. Alice J. Stewart.
My name is Alice Jackson Stewart. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor,
and members of the council. I am here to speak in behalf of Arthur. On last Friday, during the Governor Douglas Wilder's radio program, I endorsed the decision of the Planning Commission. I think it's extremely important, if we have a commission, that we follow in that commission the wishes of the family and the expertise of those who are architectural advisors to the commission. I am speaking now in behalf of the family's wishes, which I think we should certainly respect. However, in any situation, we need to consider viable alternatives. And in that instance, we would charge the commission to take into consideration the alternatives that might represent the character and the statue of the man we honor here. We are not talking about a citizen of Richmond only. We are talking about a world citizen, a diplomat of enormous proportions, recognized around the globe for his integrity, his honesty, his scholarship, his skills in athletics, his humility, and his concern for mankind. It was at the speech that he delivered at the Virginia Commonwealth University.
Mrs. Stewart?
When he was honored, just 1 minute, I'll whine, where he said, as much as I am proud of my record in tennis, I am prouder of the ability that I have used in the improvement of my mind. Scholarship for him was important, and we should take that into consideration in choosing a site for Arthur.
Reverend Dr. Paige Chagoyas.
To the Honorable Mayor Young.
Dr. Chagoyas, before you begin, pull your microphone down first, please. Thank you.
To the Honorable Mayor Young, members of council, and distinguished members of the Ashe family, my name is Paige Chagoyas. I am thankful to the council for sponsoring what is perhaps the best match of Arthur's life. Even in death, Arthur is still the top seed in this match. Even now, Arthur would know that this debate is more about who we are as people and as citizens of Richmond than about who he is as a person. Like in 1975, Arthur will triumph tonight. Like any great champion, Arthur will demand the best of his opponent. To play against Arthur, you will first have to return his serve. He'll win most often on his moral aces, that quality and power of his serve that few people in the world are able to return, because Arthur serves without malice and without vindictiveness. Arthur serves without contempt. Arthur serves without cynicism. Arthur serves with no disrespect of his opponent. Arthur serves to both begin the game and to end it. Let us not allow ourselves to be locked into a Monument Avenue decision, pro or con. Any decision to put him there has more to do with race than anything else. It has more to do with our failure than with Arthur's success. Let the citizens of true goodwill make their decision on Arthur's best interest and the focus of his life, rather than upon the staged war of political soldiers of self-interest. Yes, Arthur warred against racism, and yes, Arthur fought for the fullest expression of human dignity on and off the tennis court. But the venue that shaped his life's expression was the tennis court. Though admirable, it was not Arthur's human rights involvement that made him famous, rather his tennis prowess. Otherwise, Arthur would have been just another African American wanting to breathe free. We must be clear about this one fact, that Arthur needs no fallen heroes of whatever description to brighten his aura of being. Placed on a crowded street of memorialized human beings,
Dr. Shigowitz, 2 seconds.
Arthur stands head and shoulders above all and any who fought for victory with man-made weapons. They won battles of hatred with a few hundred men for the sake of a few million Americans. Arthur has won the battle of love and dignity with the God-given weapon of self-respect for the entire world.
Thank you. Arnold Moore.
Hey, my name is Arnold Seymour Jr. I live
Seymour, pull your microphone up.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
My name is Arnold Seymour Jr. I live on Malvern, and I'm very pleased that the City Council is having this hearing today. I propose the best site for Arthur Ashe is the Ashe Center. I think that Bird Park would be a good location, but I understand that there are many Italian Americans who are going to be upset if the statue of Christopher Columbus is moved. They contributed great money and time years ago to put Columbus there. I don't think it's appropriate to move one statue to put another one there. As long as they, but Bird Park in itself is fine. That's just not the best location. Monument Avenue also is not the best location. Monument Avenue is significant because it's all the statues dedicated to one era, to one cause. In every city in the country, you have streets with statutes on them, but those streets don't have the significance of monument because all the statutes on monument are dedicated to one particular cause. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, none of those people belong on Monument Avenue. And if the founder of our country doesn't belong on Monument Avenue, neither does Arthur Ashe, despite the fact that Arthur Ashe was an outstanding American, an outstanding hero, and deserves to have a statue in his honor. I think there's been a little bit of a problem here with education, I suppose. I was a history major at the University of Virginia, where I graduated in 1987 with an A average in history. The war between the states, the Civil War, was not fought over slavery. It was fought for states' rights. Very few of the Southerners owned slaves, a very small percentage, 10 to 15. All the rest of the individuals fought for states' rights, including among those Southerners fighting for states' rights were many African Americans, many Native Americans. Stan Wadey, a Confederate general, is currently honored on a U.S. postage stamp. He was a Cherokee Indian. If we want Monument to grow, let's let it grow in the heritage that's made it famous. Let's have a statue dedicated to African Americans or Indian Americans. There are lots of different people you can dedicate it to. Finally, I would like to point out that Ulysses S. Grant, the leader of the Union, was a slave owner. The war was not fought over slaves. It was not a war of slavery. It was a war of states' rights. If the leader of the Union was a slave owner, there's just no credibility to the fact that the war was fought. They were fighting for slavery.
Mr. Moore.
Thank you very much.
Jim Slicer is next. Following Mr. Slicer is George Leadham, Linda Sharp Anderson, Barbara Gray, and Robert J. Gray.
Hello, thank you very much for inviting us here. I know it's for you all a very long ordeal, but for us it's a moment to express an idea. I live in the Fan near Monument Avenue, and I walk past the monuments most of my days because that's sort of my little route for walking. When I moved here from D.C., I used to do the same kind of walking around the monuments in D.C., and I got a great deal of inspiration out of them, the Jefferson Memorial, the Lincoln Memorial, because the ideas that were up on those walls meant something about me in terms of hope about the future. And in many ways, I hope that the uplifting and life of Arthur Ashe will serve that same purpose here in Richmond by having a statue dedicated to his life with his ideas out there for people to read as they go past, not just simply his statue, but the words themselves, I think, will add a great deal to it. I've always been sort of amused, though, about Monument Avenue ever since I've been here for 5 years, and probably I may offend some people when I say this. But to me, it was just, it's a group of statues that are Civil War veterans, people from the Civil War, but it represents really the lost cause. I think that's the term they love to use for it. And for me, to have the principal Richmond monument dedicated, or conglomeration dedicated to the lost cause, is like saying we're dedicated to no hope, to no future. And I don't mean that as a put down to those people who believe that, but to have as the principal monument in Richmond to be dedicated to that is sort of like having a monument dedicated to unrequited love. You know, after a while, the population rate will go down, you know, because there's no reason to believe that you have a future. And maybe that's why our population has gone down, is because, in a sense, we do have this major monument dedicated to lost cause. I would hope to think that no matter where you put it, and since I've heard all this debate, I've come to the conclusion coming up with any idea is probably as good as anybody else's, so that where you put it ought to be a place that enshrines the noble ideals and purposes and life of Arthur Ashe, whether you put it on the monument area or whether you put it on Boulevard or somewhere else, something that kids can remember. I'm reminded, to close up, of an experience that happened at a meeting about a year or two ago. A famous athlete here in Richmond was speaking, and he was talking about his college experience. The fact that, as we all know in college, we walk into cafeterias and you have a white table and a black table, and sort of the dilemma he faced in his life.
Mr. Slicer.
That's it.
Thank you.
Okay.
The next
Mr.
speaker.
Vice Mayor, I need to hear the end of that story. It's just...
I think we all would, Mr. Slicer. Tell us the end of your story. It's got to be good. That's all I can say. I'm in a lot of trouble.
Better be good. Go ahead.
Anyway, but that in the experiences we have, it's sort of bouncing. And he said his dilemma, bouncing back and forth. He didn't feel like he belonged to either one. And I thought it mirrors a lot of our experiences. And I remember thinking and talking to him afterwards, and I said, what about the third table? The table that's occupied by all those folks who don't want to be dominated by the rhetoric of the white table or the rhetoric of the black table, but rather wants to be dominated by things that are more spiritual, more concerned with hope, more concerned with the future. And I think in many ways that if we can use the Arthur Ashe as a way to be the third table and not just simply representing the voices of the white table or the black table, but the voices of the future, I think we will see a monument that's going to be dedicated to hope and to, as the title of his book says, the days of grace.
Thank you,
Mr. Slicer.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Yes.
Sir.
Mr.
Slicer.
Thank you meant that. But
Yeah,
anyway.
you raise a very interesting question, and in the community where the statues have stood so long, could you, in your opinion, you sound very intelligent, you've thought about this, are there any implications by allowing something to remain by our non-action? Is there any action that could possibly be taken where it would justify or make us feel better about ignoring that? Are there any thoughts on that?
Ignoring what?
The fact that they're here. That you said there was a lost cause, but they're here.
Well, I would say as an outsider, and unfortunately I think for those who live in Richmond, you've lived with it all your life. It has been very much a symbol on both sides of the both tables. For some it's been a symbol of a past history, for others it's been a symbol of oppression.
So I think for many of you, you've lived in that experience. For those who come from the outside, it's just another set of statues. So I think in many ways it gets back to the table analogy of, I think it's the white tables fighting the black table over this, and those of us who represent the third table would say, let's get on with it and recognize the fact these statues exist, and then and set it up in a way that's good for the future. So I don't know if I answered your question.
You did very well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Slicer.
All right.
George Leadham is next.
Good evening. Members of the council, I just want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to state my opinion. Arthur Ashe brought honor and distinction to the city of Richmond, and it is fitting that the city of Richmond honor the memory of this great man. There is no question that Arthur Ashe is the caliber of hero worthy of a spot on Monument Avenue. However, placing Arthur Ashe's statue among the figures of the Confederacy would be inappropriate. Monument Avenue has long been nationally known as the capital of the Confederacy's monument to its Confederate heroes. Placing any modern-era figure on Monument Avenue would destroy its historical significance. A more fitting placement for Arthur Ashe would be at the Arthur Ashe Center or in Byrd Park, allowing his statue to form the foundation for making Boulevard an avenue of monuments to Richmond and Virginia heroes of the modern era. Rather than renaming Boulevard for one hero, develop it for the remembrance of the many great men of Richmond's past and future, with Arthur Ashe as its cornerstone. Other suggestions, such as renaming the downtown expressway the Arthur Ashe Expressway, or creating an Arthur Ashe Park in the downtown retail district, also have merit. The Arthur Ashe Memorial Park, replacing the Miller Roads building and including an African American Hall of Fame, would serve many important goals, including beautifying downtown and creating a centrally located, educational, and useful remembrance of a great hero. But Monument Avenue should remain solely a monument to the Confederacy. While people have widely varying feelings and ideas about the figures depicted on Monument Avenue and of the Civil War itself, there is no question that it remains an important part of our nation's history. Certainly not all of the ideals represented in the Civil War were honorable or even moral. But at a time when people all over the country are complaining about large and overbearing federal government and decreasing individual and states' rights, it's important to remember that a century ago, men and women were willing to sacrifice everything to maintain the integrity of the states. While some joke or complain that the Monument Avenue is a monument to losers in a lost cause, it is a monument to a cause worthy of being fought, and a successful statement made and not forgotten. The figures on Monument Avenue serve as a reminder to the people on Pennsylvania Avenue that the citizens of this nation are willing to fight and die for states' rights. Placing Arthur Ashe on a monument to the Confederacy would take away from his memory as well as the memory of this nation's struggle for freedom. Finding an alternate site for the Arthur Ashe statue would serve two equally important purposes: preserving our city's historic monument to a war that helped mold our nation, and affording Arthur Ashe a site all his own, not tainted with controversy or division. Arthur Ashe is a great modern-day hero, and he should have his own proud position in our city. Thank you.
Linda Sharp Anderson. Following Mrs. Anderson is Barbara Gray, Robert Gray, Janet Smith, Greg Tyre, Stephen Kadar, Judy Adler, and Calvin Gallagher.
Good evening, members of City Council, Mr. Bob, Mr. Ashe's family. My name is Linda Sharp Anderson, and I have the pleasure of serving as the President and CEO of the Metropolitan Business League, and I'm also a resident of